How's it guys? Today we're going to be kitting out this Jimny with our Slimline bumper and giving it a 50mm lift. We decided to do this as a home fitment so you guys can see how easy it is to do it as a DIY kit and what tools you need and just little things to watch out for. To start off, we're going to have to undo the body clips and the bolts on the fender side. We'll then pop the bonnet, get the body clips off the grille and release the bolts underneath holding the bumper in place. Okay, we've just taken off the wheels to help us with access to the bolts and the body clips that we've got on the side. Okay, these body clips just have a pin that spreads the feet that ends up locking in position. So basically what you're doing when you're releasing these is you're pulling that pin back, which allows these feet to flex in. And you can remove it from the hole then. Okay, we just use a 10 socket for these self-tipping bolts that are in here. Okay, so we've got these two front Phillips screws that we're going to be undoing, as well as the three that's sitting just further back, holding your plastic scrub plate in position. The screws should all be relatively easy to loosen. So we're just going to undo these two driver's side body clips. They just secure the bump onto the plastic inner fender cover. Okay, so we're just going to pop the hood. Will allow us access to this little plastic grille. We've got to undo this plastic grille and then it'll give us access to another 3 body clips holding the bumper to the subframe. Two on the passenger side, one on the driver's side. Okay, an important thing to remember when removing this grille is that it is held in by clips, so you can't just pull it straight up. You have to rotate it forward so the clips come undone and then you can lift it out. Okay, these are the last 3 body clips holding your bumper onto your chassis. When we come to removing the bumper, it's very important to make sure that you have a flat screwdriver with you to be able to undo the spotlight cables. And the next important thing is we've got 2 clips and this holding the bumper still onto the frame. The way we remove this, the easiest way, and that will save the clip's life, is rotating the bumper slightly up and then just manually lifting those clips with your fingers. Just end up lifting that clip up slightly, it helps it release off the... Okay, once we got to this part, I normally just rest the bottom end of the plastic bumper onto this plastic housing here. Grab the screwdriver and work your clip off. So basically with the screwdriver, all we're doing is we're pushing this section down, which allows it to slide easily away. Okay, next part is we got to get rid of these plastic air ducts and this plastic shelf at the bottom here, as well as this metal bracket. It's once again still all body clips and your number 10 socket. The last one, we have to remove this last mounting bracket that held the bottom of your bumper in place. Yeah, so that's the bumper off. The next task will be to trim this plastic inner fender here on both sides. Okay, this plastic inner fender, really its point is from finishing off the inside of the fender on an aesthetics point of view, as well as stops mud from flicking up onto the underneath side of your bumper. So once we've trimmed this, it will then cover, we're just trimming it so it covers the new Slimline bumper that we're going to be putting on, and this will all be open space, the ground clearance. Okay, so we're just going to be cutting across here and then up and out so that we're left with this strip. Okay, for this you can either use a Stanley knife or tin snips. We've got tin snips, it makes your life a lot easier. Okay, we're just cutting at both sides, and we'll cut along the same line as we chose on the passenger side. We use a cling wrap film, but you could use newspaper or whatever you need. But basically, all we're going to be doing is wrapping this front area here across to stop overspray, and we'll be spraying the body mounting brackets as well as your recovery points black to suit the bumper, and just so it blends everything in nicely. And we're just going to get some thinners and clean up the crumple zones, the body mounting brackets as well as the recovery points. These are the areas that we're going to spray, so we want them to be nice and clean so that the paint can adhere to them nicely. Now we're going to be removing the spotlight so we can put onto the new steel bumper. We've got 2 self-tapping screws that we've got to undo, and 2 clips holding the loom in position. This first clip here, which is your wire connection, it's got a little tab on the inside here, so if you come in with your screwdriver and just compress that tab on that side, the left and then the right of it, and this will allow you to pop it out. There's your 2 little connections. Okay, these clips have got little teeth that bite into the plastic, so you got to try open this away from the plastic and twist it out. So these spotlights are orientation dependent, so we need to make sure that our writing when inserted into the bumper is the correct way around when you read it. So when tightening these bolts, you got to make sure that you don't over tighten. It'll just be a little bit harder than a nip. The reason being, depending on the age of these spotlights, the plastic becomes brittle. So if you over tighten it, it will end up just cracking this mounting point straight off. Okay, we're just going to assemble the top mounting brackets to the bumper. This will just assist us in assembling the whole bumper onto the vehicle. For this here, we're only using your 4.8 bolts, graded bolts. Okay, we're only going to loosely fit these, as you want to have a bit of play and adjustment while lining this up on the bumper with the rest of the body of the vehicle. Okay, we're ready to fit the bumper on now. So what I like to do is get the passenger side in position. And then move on over to the driver's side. And just making sure you don't scratch any of the paintwork whilst doing this. And there we have it. The bumper sitting snug. And we can start putting the mounting brackets on. That click that you heard would be this mounting bracket sitting behind the mounting face of the crumple zone here. Okay, we've got these spaces here that we fit to the Slimline bumper as well as the winch version. The reason being is that both bumpers use the same brackets. So this will mimic the winch mounting plate that will be used. We also do have this spacer as well. This is used for the facelift Suzuki Jimnys. The ones prior to the facelift doesn't require it, but your angle on your crumple zone here has changed. So in order to try to keep it so it can fit on both models, we've just added in a spacer. Okay, this is your passenger side mounting bracket. It's got a bend here to take up the shape coming across the recovery point, and we've got a little tab here that locates in between the recovery point. This is all just to assist with assembly, and we've got this U shape that will be coming over the crumple zone and bolting onto the top mounting brackets. Then we've got this mounting bracket that will sit on the other side of the recovery point and act as a clamp to fasten this whole bracket onto the recovery point. For all these bolts, we're using your high tensile, your 8.8 grade bolts, as this is where the most force is going to be applied when being recovered. Okay, here we've got the driver side bracket. It's straight across this face as it lines up nicely with this recovery point. That's this existing recovery point. So we're going to do the same principle as we did on the passenger side. Line this up first, get the bolts in, make sure it's nice and loose so we can find these points here. We'll get the screws in these holes, and then we can start lining everything up and tightening. It's a little bracket with the nuts welded on. This we're putting in from behind here, and it locates this bracket in place here. Okay, the last little piece for this side will be this little bracket with the nut welded onto it. Just so we can mount it from this side here and make sure this plate is securely tightened to the recovery point. So one of the final pieces, we're putting the bash plate on. It just sits underneath, and I'll just use my knee to prop it up. And then we've got the recovery point, which uses the bash plate holes to hold it in position. So we'll start off by just getting one hole done, get it located. Get that later. Get going. And that's the bumper done. Okay, so we've just placed the jack underneath the front diff, so that will allow us to loosen the shock absorbers without the diff dropping down. We're loosening the bottom mounting of the shock. Okay, we're just loosening this lock nut on top of the shock, and we'll then use our shifting spinner to hold this top portion of the shock shaft and loosen this 14 nut. we jacked the diff up so that the shock was compressed, not fully but semi-compressed, and then we loosened the nuts on the top. Just make sure that it's got decent compression on there, so it's in this relaxed position. And then once you've got the nuts off at the top, this bolt here at the bottom comes out easily, and there's your shock. Okay, we're going to release the jack slowly. This will lower the diff down, and we don't want to go too far where it puts too much strain on the brake lines, but we want to go far enough where we can take the springs out. Sometimes the spring does get quite tight on these points that it gets mounted on. Just give it a little twist and you'll feel it loosen up, and then you can just slide off out the back. Yeah, you can see the difference between the standard shock absorber and the Gabriel HDP. Yeah, we've got the standard coil spring next to our 50mm lift. We're using a 12mm core wire as opposed to 11 on the standard spring. This will allow us to add additional load to the vehicle without it compressing and losing your ground clearance. It also gives a much firmer ride, quite a bit more stable on the road. Okay, don't forget to loosen this bracket before you put the new springs in, because we're going to have to lower this slightly lower down, and you don't want to damage these cables. If I'm not mistaken, these are for your ABS sensors. Okay, once we've loosened and removed this bolt here, we just want to undo this clip as well, just so we don't put any strain on these cables here. So you just use long nose pliers and squeeze the front of it, and they come in. So you're just literally squeezing those closed. With your front springs, your top is your tighter wound coil, and your bottom will be the same diameter as the rest of your spring. We're going to insert the top first to get over your bump stops, and rotate it. Your front shocks come with 2 rubber mountings and 2 caps for these mountings. One cap will go at the bottom with the dish side facing up, the rubber mounting on top of that. This will slide into the shock mounting on the vehicle. We'll put this other rubber mounting on top of that, and then the housing on that with the nut. We use a shifting spinner to hold the top shaft. It's got 2 flaps on either side, which will allow us to tighten the lock nut with a 17 spinner. Jacking up the rear diff enough to make this loose, so that just when you unscrewing this bolt, it's not going to try to shoot the shock back or drop the diff. So you're just finding the relaxed state of the shock. So you just loosen this shock on the top side here. And there we go, shock is out. Now this rubber, for some reason, always collects water. There's no hole at the bottom here. I'm not too sure what the reason is for this, but what I have noticed is on my vehicle it starts rusting the housing that sits in here. So when I do any replacements of rear springs or lifting on them, I always suggest to drill this hole out, and that way if you get water it just passes straight through. You'll notice that your passenger side spring is about 20-25 mil shorter than your driver's side, and when you do replace them, just make sure the longer one on the driver's side, shorter one on the passenger side. Okay, once again, same as your front shocks, your smaller coil side will go into the top, and your larger coil side, which is the same as the rest of the diameter of the spring, will go to the bottom. Yeah, these two shocks fully compressed. As you can see, they are the same height, so no bump stops are required when fitting these 50mm lifts. When fitting the rear shocks, I always prefer to put the bottom bolt in first. Reason being, with it being a fine thread, it is quite easy to strip or cross thread this bolt. So I always rather put this in first and then do the top bolt afterwards. Job done. Okay, that's it for the bumper and shock installation. It's not that difficult. You can do it at home. It's a bit time consuming, but it'll be worth your while. Enjoy.